Hey folks, welcome to my channel. It's Nick Granville. Today I thought I'd talk about the Herbie Hancock staple, just a jazz fusion classic, the tune Cantaloupe Island. So I'm going to assume the basics are done. My channel's never really been that much about basics or beginner kind of level stuff. It's more intermediate and advanced. So I'm going to assume you already know the riff, all that stuff, right? And then of course the piano line, all that stuff, and the melody. One thing I will say about the melody though is that there is one mistake that's kind of been in there that was in the original version that's kind of been corrected. I've heard other versions of Herbie doing it and they kind of correct it. And what it is on the D flat chord, sit again, which would be a major 7 note. I've heard people correct that so many times. So if you listen to a few versions, you'll catch that, right? And I'm going to assume that you know the chord changes. F minor for 4 bars, and then there's D flat 7 for 4 bars, and then there's D minor for 4 bars. It's the only 3 chords, and then it goes back to F minor. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, is they forget that last F minor and they kind of jump back to the top. So if we look at F minor as your first chord, right, we can do a couple of things. We can think of Dorian as probably your best place to start. That's not a great place to solo, is it? Right? And if you jump up an octave, not a great place to solo either, isn't it? At least to start from. The sweetest spot of any instrument is the middle, right? And on guitar, it's kind of here. So where is F Dorian here? That's what we want to know. That's probably the most important. Well, we could go... Now I'm going through this quickly because I assume you know this. If you don't, you need to do some background homework. But like that's kind of a spot we can look at, right? But a better way of looking at it, right, is F Dorian and B flat mixolydian are the same thing. They both contain F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat, and F. But if we start from B flat, that is F Dorian just starting from that note there, right? And when we improvise, it doesn't matter really where we start because we're going to be thinking phrases, right? So B flat mixolydian is just a different position of F Dorian, right? So that's a cool place to start, right? Good thing about that too is you're less likely to kind of end on or start on F because your basis point place is B flat. So give that a crack, right? That's a good place to start. Then the D flat chord. Now so many people get confused about this D flat chord. When it comes to dominant chords, there are 2 types of dominant chords. Dominant chords that go home, meaning 5, 1, and dominant chords that don't, like in this tune. And I think those are called secondary dominants, right? Right, it goes D flat to D minor, right? So the ones that do go home, well, that we can play altered, we can play all those kinds of things that resolve. But in this case, the best choice is Lydian dominant. In other words, a Lydian scale with a flat 7. Really great sound, right? It's a mode of the melodic minor. Another way of looking at that, and this is kind of a cool way of looking at it, I've kind of talked about this before, about converting everything to minor, is we could just play the jazz minor from A flat. So in other words, the melodic minor ascending. About that is now we've gone from F up to A flat, so that's kind of easy to see. Or we could think B flat to A flat. Remembering though that our perspective is really D flat, but we're thinking A flat over it, right? The cool thing again is we're less likely to kind of end towards root notes. Root notes are the kind of most bland note you can play. Now sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to end a phrase on a root note, sometimes you have to start on a root note to make the phrase make sense. But really, the bass player's got the root note, the piano player's probably got the root note. Other people are going to be playing it. Most of the time you don't need to. Like, that's a better note to start from. Right, so that's a cool one. And then we get to the D minor, we can think D Dorian. Into F minor and stuff like that, right? We could also think D jazz minor. It's kind of a cool sound. But over. So those are a couple of options, right? I like to have more than one option on each of those chords, right? That I could be thinking D flat Lydian dominant. I could also be thinking A flat jazz minor. I could also just think A flat Dorian, because that would give me D flat Mixolydian. But again, having options is really the key. Of course, I use arpeggios a lot. I've talked about arpeggios as often being more useful. So we want to know where those are. I couldn't help myself. And then D Dorian. We want to know where those are all across the whole neck, because those are like your really good target notes, right? And even within the arpeggio, we can kind of break that down to further target notes that are even better. One thing I should talk about is when it comes to fusion music, which this is, right? It's like a classic in the fusion repertoire. If you were to look up fusion in Google, this is probably one of the top 10 songs that had come up. Maybe. I don't know. It would in my mind. And so the thing is, like, I find like how you approach it matters, right? Because the thing is, if I approach this kind of more with a straight ahead jazz guitar tone, this kind of thing, and that kind of works, it can be cool, right? If that's your thing. For me, it's like, get into the fusion thing. If you're going to be playing fusion, make it fusion. And so what is that fusion, right? It's really a fusion of jazz, blues, and rock, right? It's kind of all of those things. So to me, like, the blues is kind of bending notes. It's like bending notes is kind of a big part of the blues, right? Double stops, all that sort of stuff. But then rock kind of, I like it blending the kind of rock guitar tone. To me, that's kind of a tone that's kind of reminiscent, kind of a classic rock, you know what I mean? That sort of thing, right? And I like that tone because to me it's very expressive. If I play light, it's going to be clean. If I hit hard, it's going to break up. And that to me is kind of how a horn player more sounds, right? If you hear horn players like blow real hard into their horn, it sort of distorts a little bit, right? So that's kind of, to me, what I'm going for. Now you can approach it however you want, but I think the idea of this fusion is kind of the key idea, right? Rock, blues, and jazz all in one. And this is where I think a lot of players go wrong, right? They either go too heavy on the jazz or too heavy on the rock. And I hear that a lot too. Like, a lot of players, when they play this song, they just kind of sound like they're shredding rock over this stuff. And that's fine if that's kind of your thing, but try and get into some jazz language, right? We can, if we get like lines going, And there I was just thinking like 2, 5, 1. Now the 2-5-1 doesn't actually exist, but I'll get into that in a minute. But the point is, like, if I hear someone play the song and there's too much rock, I just kind of go, oh, well, it kind of misses the style, right? It needs some jazz vocabulary. I mean, a good person to kind of look at it as an example of how to play this stuff well stylistically is Mike Stern, because there's a guy that has a big fat kind of rock tone and approach, chorusing, distortion, delay, all this stuff, but there's really strong jazz vocabulary in there as well. It's like a proper fusion. CESH, it's kind of one of those things, contrapuntal elaboration of static harmony. It's kind of a long way of saying something that's actually quite simple. We have 4 bars on F minor. If you just kind of go F minor the whole time, it's kind of bland and boring, right? It can be cool, but the better way to approach it, I think, is to kind of like, let's elaborate on that. So if we have F minor, what if we play G minor over it, and then A flat over it? So there I'm just kind of elaborating on those chords. So instead of just sitting on D minor, I went D minor, E minor over D, F major over D, which really just gives you D minor 9. So I'm kind of elaborating on those chords to just add a bit of color. And that's a really good thing to do, especially when you have static chords like this, because they're actually harder a lot of the time, right? If you have a bunch of chord changes, you can play lines, you can kind of elaborate on it already as it is. But when you have these static chords, you have to be quite creative in how you're going to approach it, right? So I think CESH is a good way of doing it, right? I really like fourths in this instance, so chords built off fourths. If we have an F note on an F chord, F, B flat, E flat. Now you could look at that and go, it's kind of like a minor 11, kind of, or like a sus 11, whatever, who cares, right? Just start with F and play up in fourths in the key. And then D flat chord. Now I don't tend to do these things all in big runs like that. I think that's kind of bland, but it's a little too much of one flavor, but it's like it's a mix of that in amongst other things. And I'll even do this in the melody as well. Right? And that's just the first bit. That bit, but just harmonise part of it in fourths. And there's the D flat chord. Sorry, should have been. I think that would have been better. And there I'm just playing the. Okay, and the last one I'll talk about is that when you have that F minor at the end of the form, that's a place that a lot of people get lost in this song. They don't really know what to do. They go F minor, they go D flat, and then they go D minor, and then they go back to the top. Especially once it's been round a few times, they kind of forget about that last F minor 4 bars, right? Another way of looking at that is when we get to that F minor last 4 bars, if we just put some kind of turnaround to make it clear to both the listener and all the musicians what's going on, that can really help. And the best one actually is often just a 5 chord. Just put that in, and then what happens is kind of breaks up that F minor from being 4 bars of F minor and then 4 more bars of F minor. It's like 4 bars of F minor, the C7 kind of in there to bring us back, and we clearly delineate the top of the form. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. You can do that both as a soloist but also comping, right? Just put in a chord like that, but also as a soloist you can go right and go and provided the musicians you're playing with understand that language, they'll go, oh, he's signaling that that's like an altered 5 chord going back to the top. I find that's a really good one on Cantaloupe as well, right? Hey, look, if you found this useful, please like and subscribe. I post twice a week here. I also do live streams, so join me. They're Monday, New Zealand time, midday. So most of the world is Sunday night. I usually put out a video on the weekend. I usually put out a video during the week. All kinds of stuff, jazz stuff, fusion, rock, blues, funk, love the funk music, so I kind of get into that quite a bit. So yeah, share this with anybody who's into the same kind of thing. Hey, look, I've linked below the buy me a coffee if you're into that. PayPal's there too if you also want to support. YouTube doesn't make me money. I'm not doing it for that reason. My account's not even monetized at this point. Maybe it will be eventually, but I don't really care about that. I'm just doing this to kind of build a community, which is what's going on here. There's a lot of people who regularly watch and are really helpful with their comments and stuff like that, because I think that's really what it's all about. And yeah, so, and I'm doing this because I enjoy it. That's why I do it, right? That's why we should be doing anything in music. Anybody's doing music to try and get rich, well, good luck to you. It's never been my philosophy. But yeah, hey, the easiest thing you can do is just hit like and subscribe, because that really helps, right? A whole heap of people aren't subscribed who watch my videos, and that's totally fine. But if you're into it, then please do. Hey, thanks very much. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.